about it. If you were to run again, that you had some plans to clean out the federal swamp and bring the government back to where it should be, which is public service and not politics. And Mr. President, the left freaked out because this is obviously a source of their power. They tried to weaponize it against you. They cost you a lot of time with a bunch of nonsense. Can you comment on that? Your thoughts on the story, and if you were to say run again, is that something that you would put at the top of your priority list?
Well, it was a very strange story because it was many, many, many pages, and they basically were putting almost like it would be a platform, and they were writing it as though I wrote it, and they actually wrote it themselves, Axios, and many of the things they said were not bad. One of the very important elements of the story was exactly what you were talking about, the deep state or the swamp, and they wrote it, but they wrote this lengthy paper that was many pages long, and I didn't have any conversation with the reporter, and I don't know where they got it, and some was fine and some wasn't, but it was a little bit interesting. But look, there is a deep state. There is a lot of group of people that are not doing a very good job for the country, and we understand that. And I think only somebody that's been there for a period of time, I was there for a long period of time, and would understand it. Most people don't believe it. They think it can't be possible, but it maybe is even worse than anybody would think. If you look at the things that go on, it's a lot worse than people would ever imagine.
Well, obviously, Mr. President, I was not in your spot. It's fairly obvious, but you would think, when you get elected president, that everybody just, falls in line. And unfortunately, that's not the way it happens. And I don't think people really understand the depth of the anger some of these people who put politics before their public service had. They really tried to get in front of everything you did in the administration, the leaks, all this other nonsense. I mean, think about it. You got 3 justices in there. We got tax reform. We had massive regulatory reform. The Federal Register shrunk or grew at the slowest amount we've seen in decades. You did all of this despite this relentless assault by this bureaucracy.
Rebuilt the military, Dan. I rebuilt the military. Right. Of course, we gave $85 billion of it to the Taliban through Biden, but rebuilt the military. We did things that nobody thought could be done despite this. But they do. They will slow walk things. They won't say no. They'll never say no. They'll slow walk. They'll say, oh, yes, sir, we'll get this done. And then all of a sudden you'll say, where are those papers? Oh, we're working on them hard. You have people that you would least suspect. It's a crazy place. And it happens to other presidents, too. This is not unique. It's happened to others. And I would say it's happened to all. But it's a very unusual place. There's no question about it.
So not to belabor the point.
That can be handled, by the way, and it can be handled.
That's what I was going to ask you. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. I don't want to beat this up. I got a couple other things I want to talk to you about. You've been generous with your time, but is that priority number one for you? If you were to run in 2024, that personnel, that you got to get the right people in there. I mean, you ran as an outsider last time, Mr. President. You didn't have a list of your old political You weren't a political guy. You were a business guy. Now you've been there. You've seen it. You got a battle plan now. Is that priority number one, personnel?
So the most important thing is personnel, because without the right personnel, and what people don't talk about and don't really understand, but maybe they do, I had great people, but I also had some bad ones. You take recommendations. I was in Washington very little during the course of my life. 17 days, they tell me. I never stayed over. And some of those 17 days was building a great hotel that worked out very well. But, I was in Washington very little, and I was taking recommendation of people that in some cases were rhinos, and rhinos that you didn't know were rhinos, or people that I wouldn't have agreed politically with certain things, but were taking recommendations from people that I knew in Washington and that maybe I respected, but maybe in the end didn't. And you'd put some of those people in, and they didn't do the job. But I will say, when you think of all that we've done, getting the tax cuts, biggest tax cuts ever, I have a book of over 1,000 things that we did. Even right to try. I mean, something like right to try. You know what that is. We got so much done, but it was some cases like hitting your head against the wall. And speaking of the wall, by the way, We did an unbelievable job on the wall, but I had a 2.5-year delay because I got sued by Democrats in Congress and others. We had 11 lawsuits. I won them all. Took 2.5 years. We got the wall built. Then I added additional wall, and that would have been completed in 3 weeks, except Biden decided not to do it. But we did an incredible job with the wall, and that's why my numbers were so incredible, were so good on illegal immigration. And by the way, I looked at an overhead today from, I guess, a helicopter shot of a caravan coming into this country. There's never been it. This isn't even a caravan. This is mass. This is a mass of people, the likes of which few have ever seen before, pouring into our country. Nobody has any idea where they're from. They don't check them. They just let them come in. Our country is being poisoned to death.
Yeah, 900,000 gotaways since you left office. 900,000,
well,
bigger than the population of San Francisco. Mr. President, big number coming out on Thursday. Now, you come into office, Barack Obama leads the worst recovery from a recession. Those are just the numbers in modern American history. He is the first president to never hit 3% GDP. You come into office, boom. Just takes a couple of quarters, turns it around. Finally, the economy's motoring again. Then we get the COVID disaster, right? Now, Joe Biden's about to hit 2 negative quarters.
And then we built it again.
Then you did it again. Yeah. That's right. That's my favorite. Remember I called you? I said, Mr. President, you gave me goosebumps when you said we'll build it again. I loved it.
I did it
That is the line.
Yeah.
You did. But now we're looking at a recession here with Joe Biden. Right. This has got to infuriate you knowing the answers are already there. Just follow the battle plan you laid out.
Well, remember, their numbers are better than they really should be because they had an overflow from the success that I had. And as an example, in the stock market, the stock market was higher on November. If you look, January 20th, it was higher than it was prior to COVID coming in. So when COVID came in, I will say this, without the China virus, because that's a much more accurate term, coming in, Dan, that was the greatest economy in history. We went through that period of the early years. That was the greatest economy. We were lapping China. We were doing numbers that nobody ever would have believed. Everybody said 2018 China will surpass us in terms of size. It was just the opposite. We were picking up steam against them. Not easy. And we did a job that we had the greatest economy ever in history. We did the greatest numbers ever in history. Then we had COVID come in, and then we redid it again. But that first redo, then the second one was a work in progress, but it was really strong. The stock market was even higher, and we gave it over. They had a lot of that left over from what I was doing, and that helped their numbers because when they average them out. But for the first 4, 5, 6 months, they were able to take advantage with what I did. But it's a shame what's happened to our country. It's a shame what's happened to the lack of respect we have from other world countries is incredible. Yeah. They no longer respect us as a country. Iran would have never have even thought about doing what they're doing right now. That's a big problem, by the way. It must be. You can never allow them to have a nuclear weapon. China, the lack of respect. Russia would have never, ever gone into Ukraine. And even the Democrats say that wouldn't have happened. And it didn't. For 4 years, it didn't. It was not even a question. Putin would have never done that. All of the thousands, hundreds of thousands of lives that are being lost and the total destruction of that country would have never happened. It's very sad to look at what's happened to our country.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing it now with China and this potential Pelosi trip to Taiwan. The rhetoric of Mr. Trump Mr. President, is insane. The Chinese government has been empowered since you left office. There's no question about it that the Democrats are now admitting it, that the rhetoric from China has been escalated. And they just don't want to say it since you left, that they leave that part out.
They didn't talk to me that way. They didn't talk to me that way. And by the way, they talked to this administration the first day when they were in Alaska. Do you remember that, right? They were lecturing us the first day. They never talked to me that way. And I had a very good relationship. It obviously, once COVID came in, I viewed them much differently in a much different way than I did initially. but we had a strong relationship with them. I took in hundreds of billions of dollars of taxes and tariffs from China. Now the word is that Biden's going to give it all back. Hundreds of billions. Think of this. Iran would have never, ever even thought to have a nuclear weapon. They were We would have had a deal within 1 week. We would have had a deal with Iran. Now Iran wants billions of dollars. They want. It's not even believable. And they're very close to having a nuclear weapon. Would have never happened. All of these things, and we wouldn't have had inflation, Dan. We had $1.87 gasoline. We had $30 and $40 a barrel. Now it's going to be $150. What's happened is incredible, but we had no inflation. We were energy dominant. We were energy independent, but we were energy dominant on our way to total dominance. And now we're begging for energy from Venezuela, from Saudi Arabia, from everybody, like a bunch of beggars. What's happened to our country in 2 years has never happened before, and never so quickly.
Mr. President, I only have a minute left before the computer cuts me off, but just your quick thoughts on this ridiculous January 6th hearing, these absurd claims of you attacking a Secret Service driver, sending armed people. It's at the point now where it's beyond fairy tales. It's just absurd. Your thoughts on that in a minute?
It's a disgrace. I mean, for that person who wanted to work for the administration, she wanted to work for me with the group, and the group didn't like her. They said they don't like her, but she made up these stories. Were disputed. I mean, the Secret Service, which they never do this, they said that never took place. Think of it. I'm going to strangle. That he strangled. He tried to strangle.
I didn't know you were a UFC fighter, Mr. President.
Yeah,
I know you like the UFC, but I didn't know you were warming up for the UFC in the back of the limo.
I like watching. Okay, I like watching. So ridiculous. The whole thing is a hoax, and it's a disgrace what's happened to our country.
Yeah, it has. Mr. President, thank you so much for your time. It's always an honor to speak with you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Dan.
Take care.
Thank you.
You
Bye.
got it, folks. President Donald J. Trump, folks. Covered a lot of material there. All right. Well, if you missed any of that, by the way, we'll put some of the cuts on my podcast tomorrow. So we'll be right back.
Bongino. NobleGoldInvestments.com. Inflation is real, and the rate is estimated to be upwards of 10%. Soon, $1 million in your retirement account won't even last as long as you need it. Look, you need to store the value of your money, and you need to do it fast. The solution is NobleGoldInvestments.com. A precious metals IRA acts like a